Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October 7th, 2024 council meeting. The recommendations that a council meeting be held today starting at 5 p.m. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. And we have recommendations to have a closed meeting be held October 7th, 2024 at 5 p.m. at the Wilmot Administrative Complex in accordance with Section 239(2)(b), E, and F of the Municipal Act to consider the following: litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, personal matters on an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employees, and subject to client solicitor privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, which also relates to personnel of an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. May I have a mover for that, please? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? That carries unanimously, and we will reconvene at roughly 7 p.m. for open. All right. Good evening to everyone who's joining us in the gallery. Thanks for being here. And Council, I will look for a motion to reconvene into open session at 7 p.m. Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. We've gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people, we are reminded of the important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. We do have additions to the agenda tonight. Both are delegations. So once we get to that part of the agenda, we will have them speak. And may I have a May I have a mover, please? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall for the agenda as amended. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Our minutes from our previous meeting are that of September 23rd, 2024, and they are to be adopted as presented. May I have a mover? Is that a question, actually, Councillor Wilkinson? Okay, moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin. Councillor Wilkinson, you have a comment?
Through the chair, I did receive an email correspondence from a constituent who was concerned about missing attachments being present in the minutes as presented in this package. I'm just wondering if the clerk would be willing to provide some clarity because I think to my understanding that the presentation materials are included on the web version of the minutes, if I'm correct.
Through the Mayor, that's correct. So the attachments are listed under the delegation online through, I think, both the PDF and the HTML versions. Certainly the HTML, I know it's there. I double check that one. And then for your minute package that you have in your agenda package, that one typically doesn't include all the attachments that were received because it would just be a reduplication of those efforts, but they are online and they are forming part of the official record.
Any other questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. So we do have two specific interest delegations who have registered to address Council this evening. I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. For those who are joining in person, please proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. Delegations will have 7 minutes to speak. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting, including interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at inappropriate times, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from Council. This is Council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. Although it is rare, I'd like to remind delegates and members of the public that failure to adhere to appropriate decorum may result in a microphone being muted or removed from the meeting. Out of respect for all meeting participants, I kindly ask those in the gallery to remain seated unless exiting the chambers and avoid personal conversations and expressions of support or opposition to those speaking in order to allow everyone to hear the proceedings as they occur. And as I said, once we get to those two agenda items, we will be calling up the appropriate speaker. And there are two correspondents for this evening. Did anybody want to pull anything? Seeing none. Our consent agenda items. Did anybody want to pull the consent agenda items? No, seeing none. So the recommendation is that consent agenda item 11.1 be approved. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. And on to the first of our reports. The first one is recommended that Council endorse the proposed on-road parking plan on Carmel Kosh Road, including realignment of its intersection with Wilmot Line to support public use of the Snyderlands Bush Trail and enhance safety measures for pedestrians, motorists, and road operations, and that the capital and operating figures required to implement the plan be put forward in the 2025 budget for consideration. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I will now invite our Director of Infrastructure Services, Director Molyneux, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a follow-up report from the Schneider land donation process earlier this year, where Council provided a motion to report back on the opportunity to provide on-road winter parking. And if you recall at that time, there was comment in those reports that spoke to the challenges of the existing operating environment to facilitate on-road parking. And so this report is reporting back to that component that was asked to on this date and provide some more information about that particular opportunity. And at the time of approval, when we looked at those opportunities and reviewed those with the insurance pool, staff did outline the challenges related to the existing roadside environment and on-road environment. And so this report comes up with a plan to implement some spaces now. I guess at this point what we're looking for, is that we could carry this to the 2025 budget process. That being said, though, in terms of timing of approvals, it could be something that we would consider to expedite if we were to have that from council. So this report outlines those opportunities to create safe on-road parking, which would require capital investment to create that space at the existing trailhead on Carmel Cook. So right now there is a location that has been used, and it's sort of we'll call it an informal location where it appears to just be some granular provided at the roadside, and so there's no real clear definition to it. There's no consistent full space that would be needed, and so this proposal would be to take that space and expand it in a few different locations just to create the full space for 8 spaces. 8 parking spaces. That parking space setup would provide for safe parking location. It would provide for space for pedestrians to move from their vehicles to the trailhead location, and then it would also provide for a clear separation between the traveled portion of the road as well as space to manage winter maintenance and control in that respect. As I mentioned, this is something that the way the report is structured, we would be asking to push this forward into 2025 budget, but we could look at expediting that a little quicker if possible, go through a procurement process to see if we could have something constructed this year, but that would be something that's outside of, I guess, our current budget allocations for capital, and so we would certainly need council direction in that regard. I should note that there are a few other elements to this as far as potential for I mentioned scalability. We mentioned scalability in the report, and we do see that as an option, potentially if we do have more capital figures available. I would note that we have not engaged RARE. I know RARE had a comment before where they talked about the potential to work together on the parking solutions, and so we haven't engaged RARE at this point, and that's something we can certainly look to do further as well as discuss further with the City of Waterloo. And just as a note as well, this is sort of there was discussion about parking responsibilities and sort of sharing those. Waterloo does have sort of a similar parking area on Wideman Road at the intersection that was recently updated as well as part of that process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Director Mullenhouse, can you explain to me why we're doing why you're recommending the proposed intersection realignment? I didn't get that.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So what we're looking for there is, I guess just in terms of the operation, you can see that the corner, if you look at the figure, there's an existing portion of the corner that I think over time when we have a gravel operation, sometimes it tends to creep into the shoulder, into the boulevard. And so what happens in those circumstances when you have cars traveling in a certain direction, maybe they take the corner a little quicker because of the radius of the curve. And so what we're hoping to do at that point is to change that turn radius so that cars are required to slow down as they traverse the corner. And so the reason being because obviously if there's fast vehicle movements, even though we do have limitations on speed, on posted limits, sometimes the operating environment maybe isn't conducive to support that speed as well. So this is just a method of trying to slow vehicles down as they turn the corner, as they go past this parking area. The parking area is further down the road, but if we do have some of those turns, it is a natural way to calm the traffic as it turns the corner.
Any other technical questions? We'll go to Councillor Wilkinson first.
Through the chair, you've noted the potential capital outlay here between 45 to 60,000. I'm curious if you have a ballpark number regarding what you're expecting in way of operational costs that would be ongoing.
Through you, Mayor, that's not something at this point I can fully answer. I would expect we have a number of different smaller sized units that we would have deployed in this case where, it's more, it's able to operate in sort of smaller spaces. It can push some snow around a little bit easier rather than sort of, we'll say, a tandem axle or a single axle plow. So it would be a smaller sized unit. My expectation is that could be deployed in other areas across the township and some of our other areas too that would require some small order vehicle movements. So I don't have an exact figure, but I would suspect that if we have, 5 or 6 major events in a year, it may just be a few extra hours for our afternoon shift to go out and to address. So we haven't really gone through the full process of the operating, we'll say the winter control operating costs. We would try to track those over the first year or so and really get a handle on what that would be. But in general, you're going to see things like extra line painting costs. We may have some signage and delineation costs. We do have, some of those ongoing elements that, again, but I would expect them to be, I'll say, more or less negligible in terms of our overall operating budget. It would just be something we would probably have a few more staff hours and a few more percentage of dollars, small percentage of existing dollars to accommodate.
We will go to Councillor Cressman and then a follow-up.
Yes, through you, Mayor. You talked about the scalability of this and that the potential exists for approaching RARE about assisting with the cost of parking. So the question is that a commitment to do that, or is it a possibility just so, I guess, later when the resolution comes up, we know how to word it and direct it?
Through you, Mayor. So I know RARE has I think they spoke at the meeting where the Schneider donation was approved. They had spoke to working together on parking solutions, and so we did have a follow-up meeting in the summer and spoke to some of those aspects as well, but no in particular details have sort of been, I guess, discussed further from that. So at this point, my expectation would be, following approval, we would then engage with RARE and with the city and discuss further if there are opportunities on cost sharing and that kind of thing. Then, or if there are opportunities to again to monitor further and see what the impact would be, we would do that together over the course of the next little bit here.
And Councillor Wilkinson, no follow-up. Okay. Any other questions of a technical nature, councillors? Okay, seeing none, we do have one registered delegation on this topic, and that is Kevin Thomason. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us. You will have 7 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Thomason, a longtime Wilmot resident, excuse me, and neighbor to the Schneider's lands. It's great to see this staff report tonight on time. It was said it would be coming on October 7th after the March 4th meeting, and here we are on October 7th with it on time. So it's great to see. It's excellent to see some parking options in Wilmot Township for this spectacular community asset and donation to our community. This is very much what Schneider's and RARE have been hoping for, as well as the community. And although this staff report has been a little bit of a surprise, we knew it was coming, but there hasn't been a whole lot of communication. I did speak to both the Schneider's family and RARE today, who both pass along their support and apologize they couldn't be here. I think what we see here is a very common sense approach, which I think is what we've been hoping for. The 8 parking spots, in my opinion, and speaking to others, could be a good start and are probably sufficient to begin with, and can easily be expanded in the future if need be. And I think there are perhaps, if there are concerns, it's not so much with this eastern, I'll call it, trail access, but there's questions still remaining about the western trail accesses, meaning the vast bulk of the Schneider's lands are actually to the west of this, further into Wilmot Township on both the north and south sides of Carmel Cook Road. And so, there is note of the Musselman's entrance in the staff report, and I think there's still outstanding questions as to, will there be summer parking or summer access to the west? What will happen with skiers who have for decades parked at some of those western entrances and gone in? But I think in the end, there's just enough gratitude to see these plans for at least some parking in Wilmot Township at this eastern side. Let's try to proceed with this and get this going. I think, though, there are questions regarding timelines. Will this be done for this winter? It's late in the season now, although the work in particular for the parking shoulder is just literally widening the shoulder of a road. It shouldn't be impossible to do in the 2 months of good weather we probably still have remaining. The concerns would be if there's no parking there for this winter, what are the repercussions and how is that going to impact community access to the ski trails and that sort of thing. There's also questions regarding the Carmel Cook and Wilmot intersection improvements. What's the timeline for that? We see in the staff report that it says that it's based very similar to the changes that were made this past summer at the Wideman Road intersection, but that required Wilmot line to be closed for well over a month. So are there plans to close the Wilmot line again for another month for this curb installation, or what sort of timelines are we looking at? The hope would be at the very least we at least see the parking in time for winter, even if some of the intersection improvements or whatever have to wait until spring or till the future. One of the suggestions from the Schneider's family is it possible to align the parking restriction dates with the dates that they restrict walking access on the trails? So, for example, they don't want the cross-country ski trails, which get very track set, marred by footprints into the snow. So they ban walking and hiking on the trails from December 1st until April the 15th. And so the comment they made is it would make sense if any parking restrictions that are seasonal align with the hiking dates on the trails, because the simpler we can make things for users and the more that's in alignment, probably the better. So overall, after a long, contentious process, it's great to see things continue to move in the right direction for this amazing community feature. We still need a long-term plan, though, for the entire Laurel Creek Headwaters ESL area. We need to figure out traffic. We need to figure out wildlife protection. We need to figure out how to get active trails and sidewalks and connectivity to this part of both the Township of Wilmot and City of Waterloo. And we also need to manage the growth of thousands of jobs that will be coming to the west side of Waterloo, as well as thousands of homes also to the northwest corner of Waterloo. But for now, let's focus on one step at a time, and hopefully we'll see this plan for the Schneider's parking here approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us. Councillors, any questions for our delegate? Okay, seeing none. Thanks again.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Any other questions or comments then, councillors? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I wouldn't mind having a bit of a debate on this topic. I will share my thoughts. When we proceeded to essentially come up with a solution to allow this land donation to go through, I think it was the sticking point was always parking and how do we solve this? And I think from the township perspective as well, it was very much surrounding liability and having folks park on our road. After everything went through, I think we had a reasonable solution in place. My concern is at this point, this is not township-owned property, and yet we are looking to pass on the cost to our tax base in the way of a capital outlay as well as additional operating costs. Personally, as much as I see this as a good thing and that there are benefits to give people access to the lands, I have a hard time given our budget situation and the way that we've finalized the solution to this land donation, that we should be looking at spending any more capital on this project right now. So I would be interested in hearing from Rare in terms of what they potentially would be willing to put up in order to achieve some of these goals and outcomes before we even go down the path of including it in a budget or even consider approval of the project personally. So if there's appetite for that, I would push to defer this until we can hear back from Rare.
So is that a formal deferral that you've put forward now, or do you want to hear the discussion first? Okay, Councillor Dunstall then.
Always scares me when I agree with Councillor Wilkinson. But I too have concerns. And my question to you, Director Mullenhouse, is what happens if we do not approve this? What are the skiers? What's going to happen there? If you could just explain that for me.
Through you, Mayor, I guess in terms of parking, there's obviously an issue with we'll say the peak times on weekends where there's an excessive amount of parking that takes place. Council has moved to restrict parking as part of the donation process and accepting that change, and so we move forward with those parking restrictions. What I would expect is that where we've outlaid those restrictions, that if people were to use those locations, then they would be provided a ticket of some sort. And so that's essentially what would likely occur if they were to park in restricted areas. There are opportunities to park on Wideman. I don't know exactly what the full demand would be or how the use might change based on the restrictions, but yeah, that would essentially be what occurs, is that parking should be parking in locations that are not restricted, and Wideman seems to be that location in proximity to a trailhead.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I think there's an interesting point there, and I want to go back to the conversation prior to all this going on. But Rare has always maintained that this is not meant to be a park or a public access. It's meant to be servicing certain people that have used it time over time. And again, we're not interested in having the conversation regarding parking needs and the demands from the township side at the time. So anyway, that's my thinking on it. I think ultimately we have to maybe as well wait and see what happens throughout the season before making a decision, because if the solution as presented is functioning, then do we need to further invest? That's sort of my thought. So at this point, I will table a motion to defer this decision and direct staff to reach out to Rare to see what their appetite is to put up capital regarding this project, and then report back.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Discussion on that deferral. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, I would not vote in favor of that deferral. I think the staff report is good. I think that we have a good intermediate solution. I think we heard from a lot of people. Certainly the number of people that reached out to us on this topic was very significant. The fact that we don't own the land, in a way, maybe that's a good thing, because it means that we don't have costs for the land. Many people in our township use the land for skiing and for hiking, and it seems to me that it's a wonderful opportunity that people can use it. So I think it would be good to move forward with the staff report.
Just for clarity, we have to name a time and place, don't we, for a deferral, clerk? So when would you be requesting that this come back?
So through the chair to Director Mullenhouse, how quickly do you feel you could have a conversation and get that information back from Rare?
Through you, Mayor, we can make our best efforts to have it sooner than later. I just don't know what. I'm expecting it might be a few conversations and not just one, so it may take some time. I guess just speaking to the intent of the report, what we're looking for in this case is similar to what we've done previously in terms of I push this into the capital budget planning process for next year and work program item for next year. Maybe what we can do is defer this item until we actually get into the budget process. And by then we will have some sort of discussion and an understanding from Rare what maybe their position is. And maybe that's the more appropriate, instead of reporting back, it's something we can discuss at the budget time when we talk about capital.
through the chair to Clerk Bund, does that provide sufficient direction? I think ultimately what I'm getting at here is that we have a lot of pressing issues that require capital. I'm not sure this is at the top of the list. So appreciate that.
So I will just ask for a change in wording then if it's to move it to budget. The change in wording would be that it would be a referral to Budget and Finance Committee then, if that's acceptable with mover and seconder. Okay. Sorry, budget process in case we don't name it that specific committee, I'm being told. Okay. Very good. Any other questions or comments then on this motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All those, okay, opposed? And that's carried. And on to our next report. Our next report is the recommendation that council endorse alternative number 2, a gravel surface multi-use trail beginning just east of the existing driveway access to property 966637 Oxford Waterloo Road, Plattsville, continuing over the bridge and terminating before the intersection of River Road with a proposed turnaround for road maintenance purposes located just west of the beginning of the trail section on the west side of the bridge, and that the financial considerations of $100,000 capital and $5,000 operating costs be carried forward to the budget 2025 for consideration. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Dunstall, and I will again invite our Director of Infrastructure Services, Director Mullen-Hughes, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a follow-up report from a previous report earlier this year talking about options for this particular structure. At that time, we did present 3 different options that could be considered, and so option 2 was what was directed by council to keep the bridge for pedestrian and what was considered at the time for light vehicles, and not for any sort of equipment or any sort of, we'll say, road vehicles, motor vehicles of that sort, but more so for, we'll say, active transportation purposes. And so this report is just a follow-up report from that, where we've engaged with the area. We've put this information out on our Engage website, and then also engaged with the Heritage Committee about the option 2 and some of the what we expect to occur to implement option 2. And so in addition to that, staff have also looked into a couple different possibilities as far as like turnaround locations and what we could do to allow for this structure to remain open and how to sort of protect it from other types of vehicle use. And so that's really what this report speaks to. It's a summary of the engagement process. It's a summary of comments received. We did want to give an impression of if we were looking at different alternatives, there are going to be different impacts depending on what alternative council wishes to move forward with. And so if we are looking at the option with the turnaround closer to the bridge structure, then there are additional costs and permitting requirements that would flow out of that. And if we are looking at the option to provide a turnaround closer to the intersection of Tye Road and adjacent to some of those existing access points, then there are some impacts from that as well. We did receive comment, while the bridge was, I guess, was in the process of being closed, about activity at the location. And so if there's not a lot of activity, we'll say vehicles parking and if there's people hanging around, we'll say, from at the bridge structure, that's more likely to happen if the turnaround is closer to the bridge, as there's not a lot of activity in that area, not a lot of driveway entrances or anything like that might be able to keep an eye on what might be going on down there. So that's kind of why we would recommend partially that we're looking at the entrance the turnaround closer to those existing driveway entrances. The other goal, obviously, of I guess the initial report was we're looking to use this bridge structure, not to replace it because of the major capital costs and other components involved, but to continue the life of this asset, and so people can enjoy it as sort of an active transportation or a naturalized area, if you will. And so that's why we're looking at having a bit of a trailed entrance to it, and as you can see outlined in the figures there in the report. Certainly happy to answer any questions about the report if you have any.
Very good. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I hate hate's the wrong word, but I dislike that this will be the topic that comes up again. But if a turnaround is placed closer to the driveway to that home as proposed in option 2, where are people intended to park if they use the multi-use trail?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So there's a couple places that I think are currently used for parking. One is on the east side of the bridge. There are people that that do come up and park on that side and off to the side of the road. Essentially, if we were to create a turnaround, that would very likely be used for parking, regardless of where it is, whether it's closer to the bridge or closer to the access points. There may be a periodic parking. I guess it's more so the type of use and maybe the hours of when that would be used. And so I think that was some of the concern that was brought forward before, that there maybe was some activity occurring at the bridge maybe after hours. And so that's something we can also, refer to the police services to follow up with and investigate at later hours. But in terms of actual parking, that very likely would be used. Without knowing, I guess, how extensive that might be, I wouldn't expect it to be extensive parking use, but maybe it is periodic where somebody might show up and go walk a trail for half an hour to an hour and then come back and, leave the site. So.
Any other questions of a technical nature? We do have a delegate on this tonight. Councillor Cressman.
Yes, further to our conversation this morning, Director Mullenhouse, through you, Mayor, this is a portion of the I call it the town line, Oxford-Waterloo Road, that is under Wilmot's sole operation and cost. So we can't expect any additional coverage of any costs that are incurred from Blandford Blenheim. I think that was your indication. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor. So generally speaking, when it comes to maintenance, we consider, in the arrangement we have with Blandford Blenheim, we consider maintenance a wash because essentially what you're looking at is we do a segment, they do a segment, and so it all balances out from a maintenance standpoint. When it comes to major capital costs, and specifically around the bridge, so typically with those, we do cost share those elements. We have not had the conversation about, cost sharing, let's say the bulb or the turnaround portion. That we haven't had that conversation yet with Blandford Blenheim, and so there is a potential opportunity for cost savings or sharing, we'll say, with that. But again, we already know with the bridge structure itself, there is agreement to share the cost there, and so, but we are seen as the operating authority, and so from that respect, we do need to have a lead from our council in terms of what we want to do, and then we deal with the neighboring municipality following that.
Any other additional questions of a technical nature? Seeing none, I will now invite up our one delegate on this topic, and that is Chris Sanger. Chris, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and you will have 7 minutes.
Greetings, Mayor Salonen, councillors, and Wilmot staff. I'm here to express my family's concern of the two designs being proposed by Wilmot Township staff to Oxford-Waterloo Road Bridge 37B OXF. These two designs directly affect the homes that are adjacent to this bridge. My neighbors are unable to attend tonight, but make note they have not received any notice from Wilmot Township that one of the designs affect their property. Both designs will be multi-use trails. However, Wilmot Township staff is asking council to endorse design number 2. But what they are not providing you is how it affects the landowners on this road. I am here to ask councillors to endorse design number 1. Design number 1, a multi-use trail beginning east of the existing field entrance to property 966654 Oxford Waterloo Road, which is where my husband and I live. As you can see on the map, this design keeps the road open for us and our neighbors to access our entire land mass. We use our east entrance for farm vehicles and have a nature path that we access by the river. Our property line ends at the bridge and the banks of the Nith River. Therefore, if the barricades are installed here, we can continue accessing our whole property. It will continue to allow the many, many community members that come and park near the bridge who enjoy fishing, canoeing, who walk their dogs, or who just sit to enjoy the nature and beauty of this area. Plus, with this option, there would be no cost in moving our driveway. I spoke to Township about the barricades at the bridge, and they said we would probably need approval by GRCA. Well, a barricade has already been installed on the other side at River Road, so I'm assuming the Township got approval to put this barricade in. Design number 2, a multi-use trail beginning just east of the existing driveway access to property 966637 Oxford Waterloo Road, which is where my elderly neighbors live. If you move our east entrance driveway, which is proposed, and it will be a cost, and then put up barricades, we have no road access to the east end of our property. The new driveway will act as a parking lot to those who bring their cars. If you move the barricades to our neighbor's driveway, it's inevitable cars will park along the road and make the walk to the bridge. Therefore, this could obstruct our neighbor's driveway. Will this affect waste management trucks to collect our neighbor's garbage? Will it affect propane trucks getting through to deliver their product? I also want to say flooding can and has occurred in this area, just like it does in all parts of Wilmot Township, due to the mighty Nith overflowing. If flood happens, how will Township access the road/trail? What if the gravel from the road spills into our field? How will Township clean this up? If Hydro One needs to fix a transformer that is located near the bridge, how do they access it? We take pride in our property, so how will the Township cut the grass along the roadside of our properties? I thought this was about opening the bridge to walkers and cyclists, not turning the road into a small laneway. For 11 years, this bridge has been on the radar of Wilmot Township, and yet, what have they done is put Band-Aid after Band-Aid on it. We wouldn't be discussing this if only it was addressed 11 years ago. We were naive when we bought this property. We thought the bridge would reopen since it's been in existence for over 100 years. We had no idea the obstacles we would need to jump through to get council to approve things. It's all about money, and we understand every business needs to stick to a budget. But speaking of the budget, we would like to know how much the engineering companies and the staff have made in the last 11 years doing study after study and Band-Aid after Band-Aid work. This total amount might have paid for the bridge to be restored. Remember, this bridge is shared by 2 townships, so the cost of creating a walking cyclist trail on the bridge is shared. We have already been closed off from our community with the bridge closure, and now Wilmot Township wants to close off our road access to our own land. We always support our community and show respect. Now we are asking the same in return. I am asking councillors to endorse design number 1. In closing, yes, there are lots of people that are at the bridge, but they are not hanging out. It's people that are actually enjoying the nature. And all the other people are actually parking on the other side by River Road and jumping the barricades over. So by moving the barricade up to our neighbor's driveway will not solve that problem. In fact, it'll increase it because there'll be absolutely no cars being parked at the bridge, which is a bonus for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Chris, for joining us. Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I know it's hard getting up there and speaking. You did a great job. I'm trying to understand, and maybe this is more of a question for a director. So you're stating that option 2 cuts off access to part of your property. Am I understanding that
That
correctly?
is correct.
So
Road access, yes,
road access, but I mean, you could still access, but you wouldn't be able to take a vehicle.
correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And Director Mollenhaus, can you explain that to me, that if we're blocking that, how that would affect them and why?
Yeah,
Just a little bit more information on it, sorry.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Maybe if we could pull the figure back up on the screen.
Just before we get a technical answer on that, were there any other questions for our delegate? Councillor Cressman, sorry, Chris, we'll just have you come back up. We'll deal with our questions for you, and then we'll get back into the staff questions, if that's okay.
Yes, Chris, I have a question. I think as a farmer, I anticipate that the whole, I call that the south side of Waterloo, Oxford, closest, that field that's closest where the relocation of the entrance to the farm field would occur, that is farmed as one field, or is it farmed as two fields?
Like our property, are you at? Sorry, I'm
looking at what is light in the on the side of the road that is closest. So
Yeah.
on the bottom
So we're at the
side of the
bottom.
picture, is that where it's proposed that the field access would be relocated? Is that currently operated as one large field?
Yeah, so we own right from Ty Road all the way to the bridge. So where you see that red, where they would move our driveway to, we lose that whole stretch to
On the north side or the south side? South side. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out how the access to the field would be impacted if it was relocated. I mean, I move equipment in wherever it's accessible into a field, and I would assume on the north side, where the lane is, that they must access that field off of their lane as compared to off of the road. Is that correct?
They go off the road.
They go off the road. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martin?
As a follow-up through you, Mayor Salinan, as a follow-up to Councillor Cressman's point, can we just point then the north and south? The top is the north and the bottom's the south, right? Okay.
Any other questions for our delegate? Councillor
Well,
Martin?
just through you, Mayor Salinan, thank you for coming to delegate. And I do have some technical questions, but I appreciated your bringing this forward.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think those are all of our questions for you. So we will go back to Councillor Dunstall's question, Director Mollenhuis.
Through you, Mayor. So just in terms of the access, we would consider that a farm access. It's not necessarily a driveway for a residential property. It's a farm access. So its primary use is to obviously enter and exit the field. In terms of a recognized farm access, so this has it looks like an apron, and it connects to the road and it connects to the field. And so there's obviously some gravel or whatnot that constitutes that driveway, and so that's so that they can carry over the ditch from the road and get into the field. What we would be proposing as part of this option that's presented on the screen, we would be proposing to move that access. We would be moving it to the west, closer to where that red bulb is.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Dunstall?
As well as it's going to, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Councillor Martin, did you say that you had some questions?
Yes, through you, Mayor Salinan. So then I'm still trying to understand where is the driveway, and maybe then this is the question for Chris Sainer, but where is the driveway that's going to be moved? Like, where is it now and where will it be moved?
It's currently the arrows in the light spot. I don't know if we could ask Councillor Sadhu to be Vanna White there for a moment. Oh, there we go. Councillor Wilkinson. It's a little bit hard to tell just on the coloring because it is like a gravel farm entry versus a paved driveway. But does that answer your question, Councillor Martin? Yep. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salinan, I guess I'm wondering, Director Mullenhouse, if you could maybe speak a bit further to this, and I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot, but just listening to the delegation and trying to understand, because I thought she did make some good points in terms of where people park, not needing to move the driveway. In general, I really respect the work that you do, and I don't mean to, like, I know your recommendation is for option 2, so in general, that would be my tendency. Then I'd want to vote in favor of what you're recommending. But I thought that the delegate made some good points in terms of recommending option 1. Would option 1 increase our costs, or?
Through you, Mayor. So option 1, if we were to look at that turnaround, the cul-de-sac or the bulb, we'd be pushing that into an area that has some significant grade challenges. And so it can be done, but it's certainly with the space we have there and with the change of the land, the topography there, it is a more challenging design and construction. In addition to that, that actually is within the floodplain area. So if we are proceeding with fill there, what we've been advised is that we would have to undertake some hydraulic studies to determine the impact of that particular introduction to the environment, and so we have to go through an approval process with GRCA, and that's a study and a permit that's involved with that, and so that takes time to get through, but it's not something we can't do. It just certainly does increase our costs. In terms of what was mentioned earlier as well about dealing with access points for hydro or for other utilities that might have to undertake service, so that's something we can accommodate through detailed design, where we can have specific gates set up and blocking points that they could be opened with access, and typically those types of things are common for us to deal with utilities. There was mention about garbage and about pickup. And so that's really why we have that turnaround, because even for things like emergency access, if they have a point where a large size vehicle, whether it's garbage or emergency access, they do need a point to be able to turn around. So that's why the proposal for both of the options includes that. I guess in terms of parking, if that was a concern, we could also restrict parking in that area. That's something that council could consider if that's a concern they're hearing tonight. We could proceed through detailed design and look at the option to restrict parking so that it only occurs on the other side of the bridge. That's something we could consider as well.
We'll go to Councillor Sadhu.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the handy Google Maps here. I see as far as with option 1, there is signage that says wildlife sanctuary. Would that be a concern if we were to go with option 1 as far as getting approvals to take some of that land, or how would that work?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, so in terms of, I guess, the natural environment, there are studies that we would have to undertake, and those are things we can't scope out at this point, but if there are concerns with a specific area of expanding, and we do identify from a pre-construction survey that there's something present there, then yes, we would have to go through studies, but again, we don't know exactly what scope or what terms of reference we'd have to follow through with that. But essentially what you're looking at for option 1, there certainly are more permits and approvals, and there could be additional studies that are required.
Councillor Cressman.
Sorry. Excuse me. Through you, Mayor, I was wondering about sliding that turnaround to the west. That would be to the left. And maybe having its terminus somewhere around where that road entrance is. Obviously, the side bank there isn't steep enough if you can access the field. I don't know what it is on the north side, but I can understand if you want to turn around where there's very steep ditches, you might as well have it where it's going to be shallow ditches, and that would reduce the cost. The further you get away from unstable ground close to the river, I can understand that it has lower cost. So I think, again, I'm always looking for the Canadian compromise, and thinking that if we slide this further to the west, we can accommodate some of the things that were pointed out, and as well potentially allow allow some parking there. And I'm not sure, again, I'm not quite clear where the access is to the north field on the opposite side. But again, I think the turnaround would make sense where the depth of the ditch and slope of the ditch on both sides are conducive. So I guess that would be, you know, I'm not suggesting somebody hasn't done their homework on this. I'm just thinking it might accommodate some of the concerns of, yeah, maybe we got further information.
Our access to the field right now.
Sorry, if you could just come up, I will allow you to address council, but if you could just use the microphone. And sorry, your name?
Okay, I'm Gerald Sangers. The driveway that goes in our field now, it's been there since we moved there, and all the plows have always turned there. The garbage truck always turns around there. So I don't know why anything has to be changed. Like, honestly, it's there.
Okay, thank you. I guess just I'm observing where the conversation is going. I'm not about making up designs on the fly. And I think engineering staff need to do that. Is there perhaps will of council or somebody wanting to put forward a motion for staff to bring back more information of some sort or to assess a certain option? I guess I'm just trying to figure out a practical way for us to move forward and not be making road design changes in the middle of a council meeting. I will go to Director Molyneux first.
Through you, Mary, if I may, just in terms of, there's a question about option one versus option two in terms of the turnaround at one end and the turnaround at the other. So this is a section that typically we would see consistently when we have major floods or large enough floods. There's a section here, particularly in the middle, that sees a lot of road damage, and typically we have to reconstruct it. So what we're trying to do for that, the option further to the west, is to pull the road out of that particular area, and so that it remains functional and we don't have to undertake the portion of work that we would normally do if there was a flood situation. We don't typically design, I'm going to say we don't typically design these types of things for one or two major events over the course of 20, 30 years, but we have seen that more frequently recently anyways in my time here, where we've had to reconstruct that road a few times. And I think there was mention about pulling gravel out of the field, and so we have undertaken that before too. And so what we're trying to do is keep the operational road out of that particular area.
Okay. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I appreciate Director Mullenhouse that information and explaining it. I found that very helpful. So hearing that, I really appreciate you coming as a delegate, but I'm sorry, I would vote in favor of option two based on everything I'm hearing.
Okay, so Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair to Director Molyneux, the property to the north, where the turnaround in option two is essentially right off of the driveway or essentially just east of it, was there commentary received from them at all? I'm not sure, because there was the public engagement summary, but I'm not sure if that we heard from that individual directly in that.
Through you, Mayor, so we have included the communication package that we've had dialogue back and forth. I guess in terms of the points of access, and we did have initial dialogue from that particular resident when the initial report came out. I think just maybe to the point of like the location, I guess, and speaking to that again, and the west side location for a turnaround. When I spoke before about trying to push it further to the west and trying to get out of the flood area, I'm going to say there's probably a bit of space here where we could push that a little further east, or at least away from where it currently is. I would suggest that when we go through the detailed design process, we're going to be engaging directly with the fronting owners again to deal with any particular issues, but we do need some guidance here from council in terms of which one to proceed with. And how to move forward there, and then we can go through the detailed design process and start to work with residents more closely on where locations of access points and how that might impact them.
Councillor Dunstall?
This is just a quick one. I just want to make sure I understood what you just said, Director, that we choose option 2 or whichever option, that you will be working with the homeowners that are affected. Is that correct? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from councillors? We currently have the recommendation to endorse option 2 in its essence, but it will be coming back for final budget consideration. Okay, seeing Councillor, I was about to say Councillor Stewart, but Councillor Cressman.
Through you, Mayor, and with the caveat that there would be further, during the design phase, there would be, I don't know if we have to mention it, but it's understood, there would be further engagement with the residents. And has it been moved, option 2, with that?
Yes, we already have this moved and seconded.
Okay.
Director Molyneux, did you just want to comment on the further engagement?
Yeah, I think just, sorry, through you, Mayor. If we're looking at the proposed option, the staff preferred option, and if there is an interest to try to push that further to the east, I think that's something we would like to have in the motion as well, just that we look at opportunities to push that further east if we can, and then we can use that to go through the process of study and further engagement. That's all I would ask at this point, is if we're going to have a different, if there's a support for at least partially a different approach for that option, then that we have that particularly in the motion.
Do we view that? So I would propose that. Is that viewed as a friendly amendment by the mover and seconder?
That would be Wilkinson and Dunstall were the ones who moved and seconded. Is that?
Through the chair, just to be clear, what we're proposing here is that in principle, endorsing option 2 with the direction that you're going to look to move the turnaround further east along the road. And this is still coming back for budget deliberation regardless. Yeah, I agreed.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, I guess my only comment would be personally, I don't live on this road. I think the 2 impacted properties wanting to see another option, I would be curious to see what moving the turnaround to where the field entry is personally. So moving it option 1, but instead of going east, going west. But it is the will of council, so I appreciate what's on the floor, but I just probably won't be supporting it for that reason. And I will call the vote. So all those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Can I have clerk?
Yes.
Can I have the motion reread?
Oh, yes.
With
the amendment.
Because I think we were talking about option 1 pushing it east as compared to option 2 pushing it east, which has a dramatic, it will be almost on the bridge if that was the case.
No, so we're talking about option 2 is what's on the floor and moving that east.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the motion that's on the floor in the report. Okay, so everybody has, no, that's okay. Everybody has clarity? Very good. So all those in favor? All those opposed? And that carries. And that is all of our reports for this evening. I do have some announcements. Today, I did want to acknowledge is October 7th, and it marks the 1-year anniversary of Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel, in which 1,200 people were murdered and hundreds more were kidnapped. Today, I do echo what Premier Ford said earlier today for the safe and immediate return of the remaining hostages being held captive, which is a critical element to bringing lasting peace in the region and the security that everyone impacted by the war deserves. Since October 7th, we've also seen an alarming rise in anti-Semitism here at home and around the world, and today we mourn with the Jewish community members and recommit to the fight against anti-Semitism here at home as we acknowledge the anniversary of this day. This week kicks off Ontario Agriculture Week, and it's an opportunity to recognize and appreciate the local food produced by farmers and dedicated folks who work in agriculture and the vibrant rural communities that benefit from the sector. Last week, I publicly congratulated the Emmanuel at Brighton Child Care Center on their partnership with Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health, which led them to secure a new location in Baden. And this expansion means that more families in Wilmot Township and beyond will have increased access to much-needed quality, non-for-profit child care services. October 10th marks World Mental Health Day, and Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health will be honoring the day with their No Wrong Door approach, emphasizing the need for accessible, timely mental health supports. On a fun note, I've extended a challenge to Woolwich Mayor Sandy Shantz ahead of Battle of the Barns, which is happening this Thursday, October the 10th at Waterloo, Oxford. Battle of the Barns is a part of the WIXA sporting at the high school level, with a night football game at 5 p.m. as well as at 7 p.m. and this is against Elmira, so thus the title Battle of the Barns. I would encourage anyone who would like to go out, and in fact, a whole multitude of fall sports are going to be competing in this battle, and we will tally which school comes out on top after the day of competition, and the mayor from the school that is the losing school of the overall competition will have to wear the opposing school's jersey to the next council meeting. So with that, if you're a WO sports kid, let's go WO, because I do not want to wear a Lancers jersey as a former WO grad. I really hope that they're clean, yes. The Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee is currently recruiting new members. Folks should have lived experience or experience and knowledge in the field of people facing disability, and to apply you can learn more at GRAAC, or also known as GRAC. You can visit www.kitchener.ca/GRAAC. There is an Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario Lottery Information Session for groups October 16th at the New Dundee Community Centre from 7 until 9. I told you guys I have a lot of announcements. The Wilmot Aquatic Center is hosting their first floating pumpkin patch on October 20th, and there are 2 time slots available, one at 11:30 a.m. and one at 4 p.m. Registration is required and admission fees do apply. Visit wilmot.ca for more details. I wanted to notice a congratulations to Curtis Shearer on becoming a certified engineer technologist. He is one of our dedicated staff members, and we appreciate your dedication to your profession, and congratulations. And I did, of course, want to note, this is more sad news, but about staff. This is Clerk Bunn's final council meeting with us here in Wilmot Township, as he has accepted a new and exciting opportunity. We wish you all of the best, Jeff. Are very grateful for your time here with us and for keeping us all on point. And that brings me to the end of my announcements. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you and MPP Harris for working and getting the rules changed so that our Firebirds could have their 50-50 license. And those changes are going to help all rural towns across Ontario. So Wilmot did something that's going to positively impact minor sports in Ontario. So thank you very much for all your work on that.
Councillor Martin.
First of all, through you, Mayor Salonen, thank you to Councillor Dunstall for highlighting that. I think that's great, what's happening with the lottery change and the fact that our Firebirds can benefit from that. I wanted to thank you, Mayor Salonen, for mentioning the Ontario Agriculture Week this week. Important to recognize our farmers. And thirdly, a week ago Saturday, I was honored to be a part of Let's Tree Wilmot. So there were 440 trees planted. Excuse me. I didn't mean to choke up on that, although it was hard work, the ground was hard. But I wanted to bring that up as well, because at our last council meeting, when we, well, Councillor Cressman and I didn't participate, but the council endorsed NIFU's, Tri-County Mennonite Homes, NIFU's request for the waiving of development fees. And so the trees where we planted was down in the valley, and so the plan is that as Nithview builds their expansion, there's a walkway ramp going down into the valley, and it's public access. So even though Nithview owns the property, the trees will be growing, and in 20 years' time, it'll be wonderful shade, and it's a public walkway through that valley, which was just across the road from our township property, that building on, is that Neville Street. So anyway, I thought that was nice.
Very good. Any other announcements, councillors? Okay. I do also have one other thanks just to all of the staff who were involved in our Truth and Reconciliation Walk, as well as Councillor Martin, who was able to make it out. It was a really successful night, and I think very impactful from both my experience and the comments I heard from others. And just again, thank you very much, Director Catania, to you and all of your staff, and to our executive officer, Carly, as well, who put a lot of time and effort into making that event happen. So thank you. On to our confirmatory bylaw. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. And adjournment. Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? And that carries. Have a great evening.